I'm switching in English. Welcome, everybody. I guess more people will be coming in as the time passes. Uh, 2:15. We continue our series of seminars with Mr. Karabekis, the head of Defense Education Department, National Documentation Greece. He's a very interesting and very up to date with geopolitics that are happening around the globe, with the title Biosciences and Geopolitics, addressing incompatibilities in the new of the global landscape. I would like Karabek to say a few words about himself and then start the session.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kolikusin, for your introduction. Hi everybody, my name is Nikos Karampekios and I will be presenting on the topic of biosciences and geopolitics. Let me just share my screen to get you into the loop. Okay, full screen. So, as said, the presentation will be on the topic of biosciences and geopolitics. The objective is to address the new incompatibilities between the two concepts and touching upon the new rules of the game. So first things first, a big thank you to Antonis Angelakis for inviting me to this masterclass and also to Mrs. Angie Kolakousi for making this happen. As said, I'm Nikos Karampekios and I work at the National Documentation Center. EKT, it's a Greek acronym, as is known in Greece. It is the National Statistical Authority of the Hellenic Statistical System for European statistics on RDI, Research, Development and Innovation. In addition, EKT helps businesses and organizations network and elevate their innovation capability and capacity and digital skills through a range of intermediate non-financial services. Since not long ago, I used to head this department. Now I head the Defense Innovation Department, seeking to map and understand the scientific and technological capabilities of the domestic defense innovation ecosystem. That is, to map and the knowledge capital in terms of bibliometrics, anthrometrics, and other metrics of the defense startup, spin-off SMEs, mid-cap SMEs, large companies, and as well as the related academic and research environment. So let's start from the basics. This slide sets the stage for highlighting how geopolitics increasingly shapes the landscape of biosciences, research, industrial activity, and entrepreneurship. It warns against neglecting geopolitical factors, emphasizing that ignoring them risks underestimating their influence on innovation dynamics and strategic decision-making in this field. In other words, ignoring the former at the expense of the latter should come with a big warning sign. The structure of the presentation is firstly, we delve into geopolitics 101 and in relation to biosciences, then delving and delivering on the actions and reactions to this environment, a bit of strategic questions, and then the future directories.
Sorry for the interruption. Could you close the window because there is a note in chat about the sound?
Is it? Give me a moment, please.
Sorry again for the interruption.
I thought that the mic wasn't sensitive enough. But is it better now?
Yes, much better.
Excellent. So, geopolitics, a definition, the foundational concept of geopolitics is unpacked as a study of state power and influenced shaped by geography, economic factors, and demography. It underlines how geopolitics now must explicitly account for control over emerging technologies, linking national scientific strength directly to geopolitical power projection. Importantly, the concept of geopolitics is now linked to technological sovereignty. This is directly related to geopolitics by focusing on a state's ability to independently control, develop, and deploy key technologies, thereby influencing its power dynamics and international relations. The concept is crucial in contemporary geopolitics because technological leadership is a primary determinant of a nation's ability to project power and secure its strategic interests. Key geopolitical trends include shifting global power dynamics, especially the US-China rivalry, and the growing influence of regional powers. Other trends are the increasing importance of technology, such as AI and semiconductors, and the rise of protectionist policies and supply chain fragmentation. Importantly, these topics have squarely entered the domain of science, technology, and tech-intensive entrepreneurship. Geopolitics is moving up the ladder in science and technology entrepreneurship because control over critical and emerging technologies has become a decisive factor in the broader struggle for global power and economic dominance. This shift is driven by the realization that technological leadership is directly tied to national security, economic resilience, and global influence, leading to a securitization, if I may say so, of science, technology, and innovation. Key geopolitical factors in dynamics shaping the biosciences sector include strategic competition between the US and China. The biosciences industry is a major arena for the unfolding US and China rivalry. China is indeed rapidly advancing into becoming its biotech capabilities, gaining influence over global power supply, and leveraging regulatory and trade controls to boost its geopolitical power. Another dynamic supply chain vulnerabilities and globalization, similar to rare earth minerals. I believe that you are familiar with the same debate. Biotechnology supply chains face potential globalization via export controls and regulatory delays. Also, national security concerns, impact of trade policies and tariffs, the dichotomy between international cooperation versus national protection. While international collaboration is vital for advancing biotech, innovation, and global health, geopolitical rivalries and security concerns are driving fragmentation and stronger nationalistic policies. These dynamics collectively underscore biotechnology's rising role as a frontier of geopolitical competition, impacting innovation, trade, security, and global economic power imbalances in 2025 and I believe for the years to come. Zooming into biosciences, the primary geopolitical choke points in the US-China biotechnology competition are the supply chain for key materials, manufacturing infrastructure and capacity, access to biological data and advanced equipment, and the competition for talent and intellectual property. And let me delve into a bit on some of those. Specifically, supply chain dependencies can be broken down to active pharmaceutical ingredients and key starting materials, the issue of specialized equipment and materials, concerning biomanufacturing and R&D services, it's the issue of contract research, development, and manufacturing, and specifically on those, China has made significant inroads into the global manufacturing supply chain with much of the world's advanced stage infrastructure is now based there. Clinical trials, a growing number of clinical trials are being conducted in China, approaching indeed the number of conducted in the US. Data and technology, biological data and AI, intellectual property, talent and human capital. For example, in the case of workforce development, the US currently faces challenges with a fragmented national strategy, stagnated federal funding, and insufficient pipeline for specialized biotech force. China, in contrast, has a top-down, whole-of-nation approach, whole-of-government approach that has fostered a significant talent pool and restrictions on collaboration, risk-cutting of the US access to frontier research and talent originating from China. Tariffs. Tariffs are used in geopolitical conflicts over science and technology as a strategic tool to protect domestic industries. This is a graph from the World Trade Organization indicating the spike from tariffs affecting imports by reporting period. You see the spike from 2013 up until now, May 2025, that has reached a cumulative number of 2,385. So the key reasons for using tariffs in S&T, science and technology, that is conflict, is protecting the strategic domestic industries. Governments impose tariffs to shield emerging and critical S&T infrastructures, for example, semiconductors, electric vehicles, AI, biotechnology, from foreign competitors. Also, ensuring national security versus supply chain resilience, countering unfair trade practices. For example, tariffs are often used and deployed as retaliatory services and measures for bargaining chip against countries perceived as using unfair trade practices. And also, lastly, but not insignificantly, it's a political leverage. You see now the issue of tariffs serving as a powerful tool in international negotiations to influence the behavior or policies of other countries. Tariffs are also used as a geopolitical tool in the science and technology sectors to achieve national security objectives, protect strategic domestic industries, and gain economic leverage in international power disputes. This strategy, however, increases the cost of scientific supplies by disrupting global supply chains and forcing businesses to pass along the added expenses. In the case of science, imposing tariffs is based on gaining or maintaining technological hegemony, that is, technological sovereignty. Countries may use tariffs as part of a broader industrial strategy or policy to attract innovation, talent, and capital, innovation goods that is, from other nations. The goal is to steal, if I may say so, technological rents, profits, and knowledge spillovers from rivals, ultimately claiming a leadership role in the global technological arena. The rise of industrial policies now in biosciences sector is a significant outcome of the escalating geopolitical tensions between the US and China. It particularly highlights how the US and EU frameworks aim to foster innovation security, reduce dependence on external supply chains, and stimulate localized, that is, domestic production capacity. In Europe, for example, a key token of this strategy is the ongoing development of the EU Biotech Act under the European Life Science Strategy, officially initiated in this year, 2025. The emerging industrial policy aims to create a coherent legal framework that fosters innovation and security in the biotech sector and biomanufacturing across a member state. It emphasizes stimulating and harmonizing regulations, enabling new clinical trials and frameworks, and encouraging regulatory sandboxes for emerging biotech technologies. The US, on the other hand, has already reshaped its industrial policy to strengthen domestic bioscience innovation, partly motivated by trade wars and geopolitical risks. Major Western firms are relocating investments to the US and other STEM regions, what is called reshoring, while federal funding is increasing for defense-related biotech advancements. This environment encourages the growth of a defense-linked biotech ecosystem as part of the national security strategy. There is a typology of such kind of industrial policies, so let us delve into that typology. There is the issue of matching grants for direct funding in the case of early stage R&D projects, or also public-private partnerships. The aim is to accelerate technology development and commercialization. There is also the issue of tax credits and payroll tax benefits. The idea is to reduce tax burden on RDI expenses. The issue of regulatory and workforce development through supportive regulatory climates and training and educational programs is to establish a predictable approval and operational environment for bioscience enterprises. The issue of strategic policies for independence through national policies encouraging strategic independence, or the PILS Act, that is targeted production incentives, advanced manufacturing grants, and guaranteeing federal purchasing agreement, aim to reduce upfront investment for domestic manufacturers. The issue of prioritization of domestic manufacturing aims to reduce reliance on foreign supply chains. In addition to incentives, there is a range of counter incentives, so let us explore also this kind of typology in terms of industrial policies. There is the issue of tariffs, as already addressed, and the tariff rate quotas, the TRQs, that aim to impose tariffs on imports, especially from countries like China and India. Also, they try to manage import volumes, that is to create a market space, excluding or pricing out unsafe or strategically risky imports to strengthen domestic supply chains. There is also demand side reforms that addresses pricing pressures from concentrated purchasing group. For example, in the case of hospital groups, purchasing organization, or by realigning reimbursement and providing bonuses for sourcing domestically. The issue of strategic industry responses through major pharmaceutical companies that are incentivized to invest or expand domestic manufacturing. Also is the case of made in the US products that further encourages production localization within the country. For a short recap now, characteristics of such industrial policies in biosciences include A. Diverse instruments, that is, policies involve a range of instruments including research grants, tax incentives, public procurement, regulatory reforms through accelerated approvals, and public-private partnerships. There is a global prevalence within, that is, many countries and regions have specific strategies to promote their bioeconomy in life sciences sector. Notable examples include the US through the 2022 Executive Order and the Bold Goals Initiative, the EU through the EU's 2024 Biotech and Biomanufacturing Initiative, and the UK, and so on. Focus area, policies often target specific goals such as accelerating innovation, facilitating market access, improving public health outcomes, ensuring national competitiveness, and supporting sustainability. The issue of measurement is important through the quantification of the total number of policies is quite difficult due to varying definitions of biosciences. The issue of measuring that kind of policies is an important statistical task. Lastly, the issue of investment. Indeed, governments provide substantial financial support. For example, in the US, in 2023, the economic impact of the industries was measured at $3.2 trillion, reflecting its robust ecosystem supported by various public and private investments. In addition to tariffs and the increase of industrial policies, a third indication of the geopolitical friction is research security. In both the US and Europe, research security has risen to become a critical component of broader economic and technological sovereignty issues. Domestic institutions are thus navigating a delicate balance between maintaining open international scientific collaboration and addressing risk associated with partnerships involving non-democratic states like China that may or may not steal know-how and IP. Several countries have implemented policies involving compliance units, ethics committees, and mandatory risk assessment tailored to sensitive technologies. For example, in the US, the 2022 Chips and Science Act established the Secure Center to help universities and businesses make security-informed decisions. The EU also is advancing initiatives such as due diligence platform and a center of expertise on research security expected to be operational by early 2026. However, this emphasis on research security risks impending on a number of things. For example, the issue of compliance complexity. Heavier compliance burdens to track personnel security clearances, project authorizations, and technology transfer restrictions. Also, the places constraints on collaboration. Collaboration and restrictions reduce open international collaboration and data sharing. Lastly, it's the issue of reduced agility, that is, companies must segment now sensitive projects, impose stricter access control, and sometimes divest or relocate parts of research functions to comply with tightened regulation. In the case of the OECD's, the emblematic yearly outlook report, that is Science, Technology, and Innovation Outlook Report in 2025, finds that governments are increasingly aligning their STI policies with economic and national security objectives from promoting critical research and emerging technologies to protecting against unauthorized knowledge leakages and projecting national interests through science diplomacy. This growing securitization of STI indeed reflects how the changing geopolitical environment is reshaping global research and innovation linkages. So the question is, why all the above? China has emerged as a scientific powerhouse in the biosciences through significant investments in research and development, a strategic focus on innovation-driven growth, and strong state support. Its institutions in natural sciences research output backed by a rapid increase in biotech R&D, patent application, and publications in high-level international journals. Despite trailing in the health sciences, China trailing the US, China excels in biological sciences and related fields with institutions like the Chinese Academy of Sciences consistently dominating global rankings. In addition to the above mentioned measures, tariff, industrial policies, Western countries seek to counter this already risen giant, and not just a rising giant, it has already risen, through a range of modern and more science-specific measures. For example, visa restrictions, immigration policies, that is, national security versus unobstructed mobility for the highly educated, that is the US Proclamation 143. Secondly, through declining enrollment, that is a sharp decline in Chinese students' enrollment in the US, and also through travel advisories and limitations on academic partnerships between the US and the EU with the Chinese and Russian institutions. As a result, decoupling is taking place. In the context of biosciences and international science, decoupling often implies the reduction or severing of scientific collaboration, resource flows, and technology exchange between geopolitical entities or countries, especially due to strategic security or policy reasons. This can include restriction on sharing certain biotechnologies, data, or material. While decoupling is aimed at controlling or mitigating the rise of China, or so the rationale goes, things are moving towards another direction. China has been consistently taking measures to offset the downsides of such potential. For example, China's Made in China 2025 program, launched in 2015, explicitly targeted 10 priority areas, sectors: AI, robotics, aerospace, advanced manufacturing, and more. Indeed, according to the US Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, the ITIF, when evaluating the top 10% of high-quality scientific publications, finds that China surpasses the US across to all eight critical technology domains. The gap is particularly pronounced in the energy and environmental domains. A second aspect of this decoupling can be observed in this slide, with Chinese researchers themselves having had to adapt to this new difficult environment. By 2019, surveys indicated growing reluctance to submit grant proposals involving US partners. Many feared bureaucratic delays, reputational risks, or accusations of disloyalty. Journals and conferences in China increasingly highlight domestic achievements rather than joint outputs. As a result, Chinese researchers are themselves being decoupled and coupling with researchers from other countries, Russia and India, for example. Another striking trend is the reverse brain drain. Since 2018, the number of Chinese students and scholars returning from the US has outpaced those leaving for the first time since the 1980s. Multiple factors contribute: visa difficulties, rising nationalism, attractive opportunities at home, and programs like the 1,000 Talents Plan. Returnees bring themselves advanced expertise in semiconductors, quantum computing, and AI, enhancing further China's capacity in chop-on technologies. Geopolitical tensions echo not only in the scientific and technological domains, the same goes in the capital market directions and loom over key consideration. Geopolitical instability acts as a major risk factor, prompting investors to reevaluate themselves, their strategies, and leading to a discernible shift in capital market formations and direction. For example, the issue of increased volatility and risk aversion in the case of conflicts, trade wars, or sanctions tend to trigger sharp increases in market volatility and a decline in overall investor confidence. This leads to a preference for strategic alliances over mergers and acquisitions, M&As, that is, in cross-border biosciences deals, stemming primarily from the need to mitigate geopolitical, regulatory, and national security risks while retaining operational flexibility. In the case of M&As, it represents a full commitment of ownership and integration, which makes it highly vulnerable to government intervention, whereas alliances are temporary cooperative agreements that can be structured to bypass sensitive issues. As such, large pharma businesses increasingly select blended partnerships, alliances, and licensing with selective acquisitions to spread risk under tougher regulatory and antitrust scrutinization. This brings us to the patent cliff issue. First, a bit of a definition. The patent cliff as a concept is a cyclical expiration of patents on blockbuster brand name drugs. The patent cliff in the biosciences sector refers to the massive and accelerated loss of market exclusivity for a large number of top-selling, high-revenue drugs known as blockbusters when the core patent expires. This impending wave, often cited as occurring primarily between the range of 2025 to 2030, is considered one of the most severe in the industry's history. It is expected to put hundreds of billions of dollars, that is approximately 800 billions of annual revenue at risk for major pharmaceutical companies. That is, between 2025 and 2030, the industry is set to witness one of the largest waves of patent expirations in history. Estimates suggest that branded drugs generating between 200 billion and 236 billion in annual sales will lose their market exclusivity. This slide contextualizes the impending wave of patent as a critical juncture in biosciences, posing revenue risk to major firms, but also opening opportunities for generic growth and technology-driven innovation. The point of the slide is to indicate that the fear is China that can capitalize on the looming biopharma patent cliff. How is that? By rapidly scaling generics and biosimilars, out-licensing China-origin innovation to refill that Western pipelines, and leveraging cost and capacity advantages in APIs, CDMOs, and late-stage development to capture share as exclusivity lapse between the given period. The combination of abundant assets nearing loss of exclusivity and Western firms' need for external innovation creates this window of opportunity for China-based firms to supply products, partnerable assets, and services at scale across the value chain. China's rising biotech sector is highlighted as a key player, leveraging this landscape to expand its global footprint. The Chinese bioscience sector has rapidly transitioned from a fast follower and a generics hub to a major global source of innovation, driven by massive state support, regulatory reform, and a skilled talent pool. Thus, Western pharmaceuticals are trying to reduce the impact of the impending patent cliffs through signing multi-billion-dollar deals with Chinese biotech firms that employ AI, signaling growing confidence in Chinese ability to deliver faster, cheaper, innovative drugs. For example, this case is highlighted by two very recent signed agreements. The one is Pfizer, that has signed a multi-billion licensing deal with Chinese development assets, including a record-setting upfront payment for an oncology asset, and also AstraZeneca, that aggressively pursued collaboration, linking a multi-billion-dollar agreement with a Chinese firm to access their AI platform and pipeline of preclinical cancer drugs. Given this geopolitical instability, scientific and technological repivoting, and market realities, one is set for rough waters in view of the future directions. Herein, let's explore some of those big strategic questions, and in relation to India, in relation to China, and also how to adjust pricing and distribution strategies given these realities. In the case of India, there are three examples of issues to be taken into consideration when making an informed decision. For example, the issue of production-linked incentive programs that have expanded domestic capacity for 38 plus critical APIs and intermediates, reducing some imports dependence and supporting new greenfield investments. However, India's pharma is still heavily reliant on China for roughly 70% of bulk drugs and intermediate products, meaning Indian final dose exports can carry hidden upstream risk related to China unless firms dual use or backward integrate key inputs. Lastly, the issue of emerging policy support and bulk drug parks improve the case for backward integration in China. But herein, firms should model scenarios where China inputs face higher tariff or export frictions that can change the landed cost and availability. In the case of in China and how to navigate the business, one should take into consideration the issue of deal structures, the compliance tax, and policy trajectory. In the case of deal structures that favor ex-China rights, licensing or co-development via a neutral new co with clear IP, one should classify the technology under Chinese restricted or freely exportable categories before negotiation. In the case of compliance stack, one needs to check catalogs or for prohibited or dual use biological items and human genetic resource approval prior to entering any agreement. In the case of policy trajectory, China, one has to note that has tightened export controls and licensing procedures into 2025, increasing the need for early regulatory mapping and milestone-based transfers to avoid shipments or payment bottlenecks. To indicate the entrepreneurial and scientific tensions to be encountered in the case of China, consider this. Just published on Thursday, the 20th of November, the Chinese government published a list of 43 companies designated to build biomanufacturing capabilities and facilities. Just to note that it dwarfs any other program in the world to build scale-up facilities. In the case, just to have a measure, Australia is scheduled to build just one, whereas China 43. It probably also dwarfs any other current Chinese government emerging tech industrial program. As such, any international science entrepreneurial decision on it should conduct in order to conduct biosciences, science and entrepreneurial activities in China, just got a bit more difficult in the sense of one has to weight this kind of given industrial infrastructure in the country, and also to the issue of sky rising any development cost in the case of the US and European competitors. In the case of pricing and distribution strategies, a few points to take into consideration: the issue of tariff-adjusted pricing, tenders, and the tender and volume-based procurement, and also network design. In the case of tariffs, one should incorporate scenarios pricing for added US tariffs on China-sourced inputs and the pass-through into finish those landed costs. The issue of tenders and volume-based strategy, one should take into consideration the issue of volume-based procurement or centralized tenders, prioritize cost-defensible products such as biosimilars, and also in the issue of network design, build multi-mode distribution with inventory buffers near key tender markets and split inventories by origin to maintain supply under export control or tariff shocks. Given those 3 points, one has to consider some more strategic questions in the case of AI. Okay, AI is quite known so far that it has a beneficial impact on the conduct of the biosciences that has been recorded and identified. However, this technology is far from being considered risk-free and political wrangling-free. Namely, it triggers national security scrutiny since models depends on high parameters, biological datasets, and advanced instruments. To clear this, an enhanced licensing process for shipments on lab equipment that generate AI-ready data, that is high parameter flow cytometers, mass spectrometers, etc., is required. In these geopolitical times and changing scientific dimensions, why would the US approve the delivery of such equipment to its core competitor? Further, the case of AI is underlined through localization demands. Data local infrastructure is rising because transfer of approvals for sensitive health and genomics data are harder, pushing firms to build in region, secure clouds, and compute trained to serve models. There are a couple of key factors contributing to this trend. Firstly is the complex regulations and data protection law. Also, the issue of data sovereignty and national security. That is, countries are increasingly emphasizing data sovereignty, seeking to protect citizen data and national interests. The issue of operational and compliance burdens, the legal, that is, and procedural requirements for ensuring compliance with various national and international data transfer rules, the issue of federated data analysis, and to address the need for data sharing without physically moving the data. There is a growing interest in alternative approaches like data visiting and federated data analytics or analysis, where analysis is conducted locally and only the results are shared. This approach supports the trend towards local infrastructure while still enabling global research collaboration. This may be a way forward. Moreover, one has to consider the issue of infrastructure and data, specifically in the biosciences sector. Both the US and China are weaponizing genomic data governance to exert control over strategic biotechnology assets, effectively focusing on the onshoring of AI R&D that relies on large human genetic datasets. Numerous reports and policy changes indicate that both the US and China are treating human genomic data as a strategic national security asset, and their competitive actions in data governance are effectively forcing the onshoring of AI R&D that relies on huge genetic datasets. To name a few, US human genomic data transfer restrictions and China's human genetic resources framework and related biosecurity laws. To sum up, we've touched upon the issue of geopolitical fragmentation, namely because the US and the Chinese rivalry that has resulted in a number of regulatory tightenings, specifically in the S&T and more specifically in the biosciences, that resulted in a number of new policies that in itself has resulted in a number of financing constraints, specifically the global patent expirations and market pressures, and also the AI and digital infrastructure demands. There are some general purpose recommendations. For example, invest in resilient and localized infrastructure, pursue strategic alliances over risky M&As, that is, make alliances with Chinese and Indian partners as opposed to mergers or aggressively acquiring them. Adopt flexible AI-powered operational models in order to be flexible enough to optimize given any new geopolitical limitation, and engage proactively on data governance and compliance. And also, lastly, leverage regional and international innovation programs. However, these recommendations, as said, are general. For the purpose of this masterclass, it would be useful to explore various and alternate scenarios of these realities and how this would affect different use cases and their respective policy, entrepreneurial, and scientific decisions. For example, I've made these three vectors. Imagine being a Chinese entrepreneur, a European researcher, and an American venture capitalist. So, given this geopolitical and biosciences alignment, if you are a Chinese entrepreneur, one would recognize opportunities in generics and biosimilars. Also, a Chinese entrepreneur would navigate the tightened export controls and structured deals to protect IP and comply with China's restricted technology categories, focus on domestic innovation ecosystems, and try to forge strong domestic partnerships and consciously engage internationally in order to optimize local manufacturing and R&D capacity. In the case of European researcher, one has to adapt to research security, especially with the Chinese and US partners. This has to be taken at heart. Also, to forge strategic partnerships and participations in public procurement of innovation, matching grants and advanced manufacturing grants. Also, one has to leverage flexible AI-powered research models to maintain research agility despite global geopolitical challenges, and also navigate the regulatory environment to optimize and focus on workforce development and education to sustain a skilled labor pool. In the case of being an American investor or venture capitalist, one would need to account for increased investment risk and valuation dispersion due to these geopolitical uncertainties that require integrating country-specific regulatory enforcement. Also, one has to take into consideration alliance-based growth strategies to mitigate regulatory and antitrust risks. Also, one can have the opportunity to capitalize on opportunities made in the US production incentives, and assess shifts linked to the US and China decoupling and supply chain realignments. And lastly, develop AI-driven biosciences assets with compliance-ready infrastructure adaptable to localization demands and human genomic data restriction. So, with this, I thank you, and I'm open to questions and any kind of points of interest. Thank you. Miss Kolokusi, yes.
Hi.
Should I share
my camera? You really, because topic.
I cannot hear you very clearly. The mic, I think has a problem.
And now?
If it's only me, it's fine. But I think that the other guests are also unable.
No, we have the same problem. We can hear you very good.
Yes.
What about now?
I think it's 5 out of 5 now.
Yeah, maybe it's I don't know, my connection here. Can you hear me now?
Now it's excellent. Yes, it's 5 out of 5. Yes.
Okay. I was saying that it was such a complete coverage of this subject that it could be recorded it, because I think everybody that attended this masterclass will need to dive in to each particular part of what you covered and listen again and again in order to get all the information straight.
Thank you for the kind words. I try to do a 360 overview of the topic, in the sense of for the class to obtain an understanding of what are the geopolitical, let's say, tensions right now, and how these tensions tend to affect the biosciences as a scientific, entrepreneurial, and technological field. As said, each slide can have a vertical presentation on itself, in terms of the new industrial policies, the incentives, the counter incentives, the issue of research security, how the talent mobility now is affected, the incentives provided by the Chinese authorities in order to lure back their brain regain initiatives, and also other foreign academics. So yes, I think, and I'm very, very much willing to provide the presentation to you, and you can share this to the students by all means, and also anybody and everybody can communicate with me and perhaps explore further each and every question they may have.
Yeah, it's a very, this subject is extremely interesting, and everybody is thinking about all this that you discussed already. But you presented all this information in a very concise way and very much up to date. Even a few days ago, you had some papers that came out. So I'm overwhelmed, really.
It would be interesting to hear what the students have to think, or how this incentivizes them to think, and let's have a discussion there if that is possible.
I don't know whether there are any questions from the audience. Probably not. I think everybody's overwhelmed.
The issue indeed attracts a lot of policy discussion now, and a lot of measures in order to navigate this geopolitical rough seas, and pertaining to the point of view one may have, that is Chinese entrepreneur, European policymaker, American researcher, there are different takeaways for each and every case. So this is indeed an unfolding field, an unfolding policy domain that risks and affects multiple and different communities of practice. So, as said, this can also be perceived as an opportunity and also perceived as a threat. So the idea of the presentation was to explore those kind of different realities and give out the fundamentals of it in order for each one of the students and each one of the people involved understand how they can make informed policy decisions, informed academic decisions, informed entrepreneurial decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is true. So, if there are no questions, we would like to thank you very much. We will definitely listen again to your presentation, and probably we will come back with some questions. Because I mean, it's a very hot subject, this one. We all hear, in the news every day, more and more things we read. We have worries about what is going to happen with, for example, the drug prices, whether we are going to have drugs in Europe or we are going to have drugs with US prices, and that means that maybe a very small fraction of the population would be able to afford. So what's happening with China? So yeah, we do. It's a very hot subject, and there is a lot of discussion that we can have.
Yeah, the issue of the patent cliff is indeed very, very significant in the sense that if you are a big pharma company, that poses a risk to you. But if you are a small Chinese startup that can navigate the Chinese and bureaucratic let's say maze, pertains a lot of opportunities. So there's, for example, your students, given their different orientations and requirements, can have this kind of issues through an opportunistic or a beneficial point of view, because it opens up a lot of opportunities in the sense of funding, in the sense of new research collaborations, but also it closes a lot of doors. Now, for example, being a European or a US researcher should approach the issue of establishing a research collaboration with a Chinese peer at a much more, let's say, conservative way of point of view, exactly because of considerations relative to research security. That also opens up the issue of administration and bureaucratic burdens. For example, nowadays, European and US researchers consider significant administrative burdens, and they have to convince their peers that they mean no harm, and they seek to establish academic partnerships solely on the purposes of knowledge. That is taken with a pinch of salt, and this has to be taken also into consideration. So yes, the scenery is open, and the students and entrepreneurs and scientists need to ponder upon that with a very careful step.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true. Okay, so if there are no questions, would like to thank you once again for the masterclass, and we'll definitely see you soon and ask you more questions. And thank you everybody for listening today. And
thank you for giving me the opportunity, and as said, I will forward you the presentation for you to give it out.
Thank you very much.
All the best. Take care.